Good morning, good morning, good morning, good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon, good evening, good evening, good evening. My name is John Shaquille Poitier Jr., and welcome back to my podcast, Darling, I'm Depressed Again. My mother, where we discuss mental health and mental health related topics in the youth, the elderly, the teenagers, the high schoolers, primary schoolers, tertiary schoolers, all things of all origins, for all race, creeds, shapes, forms. Listen, once you are a person, once you are breathing, there is something for you here. Now, each episode, we have a certain word that ties everything together, gives it a certain feel, if you will. And the word for this episode is inculpate. Inculpate. Now, without a further ado, let's begin. So, lately I've been on more of a self love journey, right? I've been trying my best to do things that help me to take care of myself in body, mind, spirit, soul, maintaining myself, taking care of who I am as not only as a person, but just making sure that I can show up for me the way I show up for those around me. All right, cool. Just to give you a bit of background information, the word inculpate is defined by Oxford Dictionary as blaming or accusing someone of something. So if you are inculpated, you are blamed. You are being blamed for something. Me as a person, I kind of struggled for a bit with blaming people for my choices, right? So, as I've said before on the podcast, I have been bullied. I have experienced those things. And when you do experience those things, you tend to get a little bit of trauma. Well, not a little bit of trauma, but you tend to get traumatized. And when you are traumatized, sometimes you make choices that aren't as wisely made as they should be. Okay. So, when it comes to making those choices and when it comes to being fortified in who you are as a person, a lot of times it makes it easier for the individual if they are able to blame someone for what they are doing, or if they are able to blame someone for what they are going through, for what they are experiencing. And this is not me removing, right? This is not me removing the blame or removing rather the accusation away from anybody. But this is me speaking about how I had to recognize that in order to love myself fully, in order to love myself in my entirety, I also had to practice accountability. Mic drop, boom. No, for real. I was doing my devotions the other day, and when I read through it and everything I'm reading through, and in the Christian faith, right, which is my belief, John's a Christian, I am John. In my beliefs, when you're reading through, you always read about how much God loves people, right? God loves people and he loves his nations and he does this and he does that for them. He loves them in their entirety. However, his love for them never removes them from accountability. And I said to myself, if I'm supposed to be modeling myself after the love of God, if I, as a person who is practicing this belief system, is meant to be modeling myself and what I am doing after the love of God, then I must also model the way that He holds people accountable by holding myself accountable for the choices that I make, holding myself accountable for the decisions that I proceed with. And that's so difficult to do when trauma informs your choices. But it's also a thing of recognizing that, yes, trauma may inform my choice, but it doesn't necessarily decide for me, right? Trauma can't make a conscious decision for me, right? Yes, there are factors, there are so many things that happened and have happened, and a million things going on around me. But the choices that I make in my day to day life, I I have to actively choose. And why am I saying that? I am saying that to say this. When it comes to accountability and self love, for me, I don't truly believe I can love myself if I cannot hold myself accountable. What does that mean? Okay. For example, let's say I made the world's most idiotic choice, like the most stupid thing ever, right? Because 12 years ago, someone told me something that was so unkind and so hurtful. Yes, I remembered it. Yes, it stayed with me. Yes, it may have formed a bit of who I was. All of those words and all those things, yes, they stay with us. But now enough time has passed. Now it has been a continuous progression of self and thinking and thought. And now, 12 years later, I have to make a choice, right? That was related to that situation that happened in the past. Now, my trauma is an explanation for the stupid choice that I may make, because trauma is an explanation. Trauma explains a lot, but trauma is not an excuse. Trauma is not an excuse. Because as traumatized as we might be, as much as we might experience in life, ultimately we the person, are the ones who make our own choices. Not the person who traumatized you, not the person who hurt you, not the person who caused you pain. It is you, it is me. I have to be the one. I have to be the person who decides how my life will proceed from this point onward. So when I'm choosing things that continuously hurt me and deliberately cause me damage, I must also hold myself accountable for actively making choices that are causing me pain. Because I cannot claim to love myself. I cannot even begin to gather the full aspect of self love if I don't even know myself enough to admit that I am wrong. And so often we assume that accountability means that we are saying, hey, that person did no wrong. That person didn't do anything. That is, it's all blah, blah. No. Accountability means recognizing the part myself, that I played in it, and working to see how I will improve from here on out to ensure that I do not make the same mistakes. And when you are willing to be accountable, when you are willing to hold yourself to that level of respect, then that is when true self love begins to initiate. Because now, if you can hold yourself to a level of respect, whereas your morals and your principles, you can now hold yourself accountable, that means that you are prepared to see yourself for the entirety of who you are and not just this perfect person, right? Not just this perfect person that we like to sometimes, that some of us like to believe that we are. For me, I began to recognize that in every single story, I wasn't always right. And that is okay with me. There were some situations I could have handled better. There were some things I should have just walked away from. There were some people I probably could have been a bit kinder to. There were some times where I probably should have just shut the hell up. There were certain situations where I was not always in the right, and that is okay. It is okay to not always be the one who was wronged. It is okay to recognize that sometimes you may have wronged someone, that sometimes you were the one that messed up, that sometimes you were the one that crossed the line, that sometimes you were the one that crossed the boundary. It is okay to recognize that. And if you cannot recognize that, you are unable to love yourself in the entirety of who you are, because no person is perfect. No person is perfect. And I had to recognize that when being on this little self love journey, I had to recognize the fact that said, hey, JJ, you're not perfect. And even if in that moment your intentions were good, the executed action caused harm. So it really truly does not matter what your intentions are, because what happened as a result caused someone harm. And it's okay to recognize that. And it's okay to recognize when you've hurt someone. It's okay to recognize that you need to improve. It's okay to recognize these things. Human beings are nuanced creatures. We have nuanced lives, nuanced experiences, nuanced habits and behaviors. Nothing is ever as strictly black and white as it seems. So, with that being said, it stands to reason that we're not always going to be right about every single situation. Because if every single person is right about their situation, then who's in the wrong, right? If every single person is right about their situation, then who is in the wrong? So I just want to start off with 3 steps to utilizing accountability in your self love journey. Now, it's an ABC step. It's interchangeable. It may happen out of order for you. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Listen, I don't know. The first step is recognizing when you've made a mistake. Okay. For me, for example, there was a time when I had said something to a friend, but I did not realize that it was hurtful because me and my friends, we always play around with that. However, I had said something and I didn't recognize that it was hurtful until a little while later. I texted my friend and they told me, I didn't appreciate what you said. And apologized because though I didn't have intentions of hurting my friend, no person should really have intentions of hurting their friends. My executed action still caused pain, right? So, step number 1 is recognizing your mistake, recognizing when you made the mistake, whatever the case might be, and what the mistake is. What did you do? Have you ever heard someone apologize for something and they don't even know what they're apologizing for? Like, okay, I'm sorry. I'm just telling you sorry so you could shut up. I'm just telling you sorry so you could like get out of my face, please, immediately. Thank you. There are people who genuinely do that. Do not be one of those people. Recognize when you made the mistake. Recognize what the mistake was. Actually know what you're being sorry for. Okay? Accountability without specificity is just BS. Wait. No, but for real, accountability without specificity is just done to produce placidity, meaning you're just doing it to calm the person down. You're not doing it because you actually care about what they have to say. It's just the fact that they are saying it, the manner in which they are saying it, and how they are saying it is causing some type of irritation, or you don't want to hear all of that. So you quickly apologize to mitigate any issues that you might have. That is not right. When you take accountability, you have to actually know what you're taking accountability for. And that is why when people say, oh, just say sorry. Listen, and this is what I'm also talking about as well. I'm a person who believes in taking accountability. However, I'm not going to apologize if I cannot understand what I did wrong, right? Like I have to understand that it's not a thing of the person owing me an explanation. No, I must go within myself. I must evaluate the action that happened, and then I have to go and say, "Hey, I apologize." I will not just apologize to get someone to shut up, but I'm going to apologize because I earnestly want you to understand that I am asking for forgiveness for a mistake that I made that may have caused duress. Okay. So, step number 1 was knowing when you made the mistake and knowing what mistake was made. Step number 2 in taking accountability, and this is very important, in taking accountability is asking forgiveness in spite of your pride. And that can be so difficult for a variety of reasons because there are times when we feel as if a situation is not as big as someone may make it out to be. It's not as big a deal as someone is making it out to be. It's not that serious, it's not that deep. It doesn't require all this thought and all this comeuppance. It doesn't require all of that. And so when it comes time to genuinely apologizing, we don't understand the need to apologize because we're not the person affected, right? No one sees why they have to apologize until they're the person who has hurt feelings, which is unfortunately a lot of the times the truth, right? We validate people's feelings based on how we feel we would have been affected because of what was said, which in turn actually invalidates their feelings because we cannot quantify or we cannot tell someone how to quantify or how to express, right, their emotions based on how they were hurt. That's not fair to them. That's not fair to who they are as a person. And step two, in taking accountability in order to promote self-love, and now this is just talking about in situations where someone else is affected. This is not just this part doesn't exactly relate to our own self-healing. But step two is actually apologizing and asking for forgiveness, putting your pride aside, and recognizing that the extent of a situation isn't strictly determined by your opinion alone. Bah, 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 bah. Yeah, recognizing that. Okay. Now, step three is making sure that it does not repeat again. Step three is making sure that once I have apologized and we have progressed past this, and I am taking accountability, that this same thing does not happen again. Because if it happens again, that means that you never held yourself accountable. You were just apologizing to say some stuff to get off the hook. And that don't work like that. That shouldn't work like that. Step three is making sure that you consider them enough. Consider yourself enough. That you are respectful enough and repentant enough to make sure that the same mistakes, that the same things aren't initiated time and time and time and time and time again. That is step three. Now, when it comes to accountability for self healing, whoa, that's a whole different ball game. Well, not necessarily. I don't think it's a different ball game, but it is quite different from asking a person for forgiveness, right? Or for it's quite different than holding yourself accountable for hurting a person that you love, for being the wrong one, quote unquote, in the situation. When it comes to accountability for self healing, the only place you have to look at is in the mirror because that's the only person who can initiate that journey for you, right? The person in the mirror, you, yourself, you, I, me, they, he, she, whatever you call yourself, you, the person, are the only person you can hold accountable for not yet beginning your healing journey. And that is the truth. Now, this is also referring to people who are like, a bit more. I'm not talking about no 10 or 12 or 13 yet, like people who are much, 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 much more younger. Because, no, I'm talking about you have now progressed past the situation. However, or rather the situation has regressed, right? It's regressed, but you have not progressed past it, as in you remain in the situation by keeping yourself in the situation, by continuously, what's the word of the day? Inculpate, right? To accuse or blame, by continuously allowing yourself to inculpate in these people, these factors, these things for your lack of healing, when in reality, you have now progressed to a point where the situation is over, yet you're still not healing. Who are you waiting for? This is where the accountability thing comes into play because now it's a thing of, I don't have anyone else to blame. I still haven't started healing. I want to promote self love, but I haven't made the choice to start healing yet. No one can make that choice for me. So, truly, who is there to blame? If you want to hold yourself accountable for your healing, you have to make the first step. And like everything with dealing with our minds, like everything dealing with anything regarding the insane, crazy world of thought, it's much easier said than done. And I'm speaking, for example, in terms of myself, because it may be different for you as it is for everyone. I know for me, the best first step towards healing is getting a therapist, a mental health professional. I mean, it's very nice to listen to podcasts, but unless the podcast you're listening to, and that goes for me too, is a trained healthcare professional, which I am not, which is why I only speak in terms of myself, I highly encourage you to go visit a therapist. Really, I do. I truly do. I really do. Like, I, I really do. A therapist is a great way, to begin to take accountability for your healing. That's a marvelous way to do it. And a lot of Christians don't really believe in therapy, or a good amount of Christians don't believe in therapy because they believe that prayer changes all things, which is true, which is true. However, I also know of a scripture that says everything under the sun was made by him and for him referring to God, of course. Therefore, therapists are under the sun. Therapists were made by God. You know what I'm saying? Like, are you walking with my logic here? So, therapy isn't some sort of device for alienation from God. I'm speaking primarily to my Christian folk. It's a very useful tool created by God to promote mental well being. And it's a very useful tool that allows us to take the first step to accountability in our healing journey. Isn't that cool? Isn't that grand? Isn't that great? I highly encourage you to go to therapy. Like I promote it deeply, extensively even, like wholeheartedly. Please seek professional help. Okay? The next thing is, especially when it comes to accountability for healing and the way that you heal and the way that you progress as a person and your own respective journey, recognize that your journey will not be linear. There will be ups, there will be downs, there will be all arounds. Self love, even getting to self love and recognizing accountability as a first step. Even when you do all of that, no journey, it's not linear. It's not like you're going from point A to point B in a straight line on the GPS. No, the GPS is going to take you all around the world. You trying to get from Virginia to the Bahamas, you may go to China first, you may go to Turkey, you may go to Istanbul, you may go to, listen, you may go to Prague, you may go to a million other places before you get to where you need to go. There are going to be a lot of ups, there are going to be a lot of downs, especially when it comes to holding yourself accountable. Because when you have to look in the mirror and put yourself on that pedestal to say, now you are the person I'm looking at, you are the person that I am accusing, quote unquote, that's not an easy thing to do. It's not. It's really, truly, deeply not an easy thing to do. So you have to recognize that the journey is not linear, but it is rewarding. And accountability, listen, when you start holding yourself accountable, there is nothing more freeing than recognizing that, hey, I know I messed up, but I know I'm going to get better. There are very few things more freeing than that. There are very few things more freeing than recognizing that your imperfections are the things that are going to be your footstool. They are going to help you, drive you, encourage you to be better. There are very few things better than recognizing that though I made my mistakes, God is able to carry me from where I was to where I want to be. There are very few things that are as rewarding as that experience. So take accountability for the way that you may have hurt others. Take accountability for the way that you may continue to hurt yourself by not seeking healing. Take accountability and begin to practice self love. This week, as I end off the episode, I encourage you to find a way, right? Find a way to care for yourself. Find a way to sit down. It's kind of cold where I am now, but sit down, probably outside. If it's cold, preferably inside, preferably where you're comfortable, and just meditate and think, how have I held myself accountable for my actions? Whether they've affected people externally or whether they have affected me internally. And how can I work to do better? This has been your host, John Shaquille Poitier Jr. with the podcast, Darling, I'm depressed again. Don't tell my mother. And I will see you next time.